Even at 63, he could be so needy. "I'm here, son. I'll be out in a moment." "Right." Ken stopped outside the door. "I've got the papers." "Well, of course you've got the papers. Why else would you be here?" She swallowed a laugh and hiccuped. "Put the kettle on, there's a dear," she said, hoping her voice sounded bright. "I'm on a tight schedule, Mum." "Yes, I know, but there's time for a cuppa. I'll just be a moment." His heels thudded on the hall runner as he strode back across to the kitchen. Why could he not remember to take his boots off outside? The drought had sucked the moisture from the dirt in the front yard, and he'd be leaving a trail of dust behind him on the old Persian carpet. She sighed and glanced around the room, taking comfort from the pressed metal ceilings, the paintings of the homestead surrounded by lush pastures and sleek cattle, and the solid oak furniture gleaming with beeswax. It had been her home for 60 years, ever since they moved from the tiny manager's cottage to care for old Mrs. Dunmore. She loved every plank, every French door, every polished floorboard. The memories were as thick and rich as the chocolate topping she used to make for Charlie's favourite pudding. She fingered a linen and lace doily on the dressing table. One wet season, when Lissy was just a toddler and the road was cut by floodwaters for a month, she'd grown bored with baking. That had resulted in a collection of doilies and tablecloths. Not too shabby an effort, if she said so herself. Sinbad, her Siamese, lounged on the handmade patchwork quilt, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, lovely boy. You stay here." The tip of his tail flicked. Ken had no love for cats. In the kitchen, the kettle screamed. Ivy could picture Ken on his phone, trying to ignore it. If he wasn't poking at the screen, then he was talking like a disembodied head holding a conversation with a ghost. Bluetooth, he'd told her one day when she'd chipped him about it. "Sounds like a reason to visit the dentist," she'd retorted. The whistle shut off abruptly. "Mum." He was imperious this time. All right, all right. I'm not one of the dogs rounding up cattle." She'd a mind to make him wait, but instead she stood and turned, straightened the skirt of her favourite blue dress, the fabric rippling over her legs, then gripped the handles of her walker and released the brakes. "Let's get this over and done with, Ivy Dunmore." Old Mr. and Mrs. Dunmore frowned down from their formal portrait hanging on the picture rail in the short hallway that led from her bedroom and the office to the kitchen. Their disapproving eyes followed her as she passed. This wasn't the way it should be. But the situation was not of her making. She was reaping what her parents-in-law had sowed 63 years ago. Ken had his back to her as she entered the kitchen, and her body softened. The disappointment dissipated like smoke on a windy day, blown away in a rush of affection. The power, the depth of a mother's love didn't diminish. He'd been such a sunny-natured child. She recalled the love in his eyes as he'd peer out from behind his fringe, one hand hanging onto her skirts. Ken's shoulders were broad, like all the Dunmore men. As he turned, the chambray of his shirt stretched tight across his muscled chest. His sandy hair, shot with grey, was thick and generous. Charlie had had the same easy command, the same striking good looks. "Here, Mum." Ken pushed the cup towards her, and she eased onto her chair at the head of the long table, in front of a thick pile of paperwork. The tea was more white than tan. "Sorry, bit too much milk," he said as he brushed a kiss across her cheek. She didn't meet his eyes. She'd been drinking strong tea with a dash of milk all her life. "Thank you." She pulled a coat.